Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday to you. Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with this week's stocks to watch for trading and investing. Going to give you the full list of stocks to watch that normally I would just send out to the pro members. And of course, we're going to do a stock market overview. A very interesting week last week. I actually traded TVIX in the early part of the week, took it for a swing, which I rarely do, but took it for a swing just because of the way things were setting up. Got some nice volatility, some fear that came into the markets, and then on Thursday had a pretty decent reversal in the markets, and then closed out the week on Friday in the green. Could be an interesting week ahead, another volatile week, and look, whether we wind up powering up and taking out new highs, or if we wind up going back and creating a lower low, we'll see. We'll see how that plays out this week. But we found support where we needed to find some support in several sectors. Um, if those support levels break down next week, then I think we've got a problem. But if the lows that we put in last week wind up holding, we could be looking at some new highs in the near term. We'll see how it plays out. It could be an interesting week. We've got FOMC minutes. Let's take a look at that real quick. What we've got coming up in terms of the economic calendar. Uh, we've got PPI, Producer Price Index, I think is important. We've got job openings, wholesale inventories, FOMC minutes on Wednesday. We've got weekly jobless claims. We've got consumer price index, core CPI. I think that could be interesting. And consumer sentiment on Friday. So we do have some economic data that could impact the markets. And then, of course, I just saw that we've got a second whistleblower now, supposedly that has firsthand knowledge of the Ukraine deal. How the markets react to that, I have no idea. We'll see how it plays out. But and then we've got China, right? So we've got China trade talks going on. And it looks like there were some rumors that the North Korea nuclear talks broke down. So I don't know, all kinds of things that could potentially impact the markets. We'll see how it plays out next week. In terms of earnings, not a lot going on there, right? We've got Domino's Pizza. Really, there's nobody that's reporting that I'm all that interested in this week. So, because of that, that's why I actually decided to share the full pro member list of stocks to watch for next week. So, not a lot going on the earnings front, but guess what? Earnings season's about to kick off real shortly here, I think in another week or so, and we'll be back in the thick of earnings season. So, that's exciting. All right, so let's take a look at the overall indexes and see what we've got going on here. Hold on a second to pull that up. Okay, um, IBB pulled back, and we found a little bit of area of support, got a little bit of a bounce, but still not crazy about the IBB. We've got a declining 50-day moving average. We're below the 200-day. We've got a death cross, right? We've got the 50 below the 200-day, so that's an issue with biotechs. IWM pulled back right to an area of potential price support, and this is what I was talking about when I said that we found, some supported areas where you wanted to see support hold. We did find that we're still below the 50-day, below the 200-day. We managed to reclaim this trend line, but still kind of guilty till proven innocent in the small caps, right? But a fairly decent sign that we held this area of potential price support. Let's see if maybe we can climb back up and get back above the 50 and 200-day moving average. That would be very constructive. IYT, another one that held at an area of potential support, right? We break through these levels, and then then we've got, I think, some things to be concerned about. But for right now, we are holding these as support. So let's see. But we're below the 50-day. We're below the 200-day, right? So we still have things to be concerned about there. JDST and Dust, the gold, right? Gold had a little bit of a pop, and then we pulled back. Or actually, gold had a little bit of a pop last week, and JDST and Dust, they pulled back. JNUG and Nugget, those are a couple of things you can keep an eye on if you're wanting to go long with the strength of gold. Personally, for me, I think there's other opportunities out there, but worth having these things on your radar. QQQ, decent little bounce, testing the 50-day. Facebook had a nice little bounce last week. We're still holding up fairly well. We've held above the 200-day. I think that's a positive thing. We'll see what happens next week. SMH pulled back to this trend line, held that as support. We also held the 50-day above the 200-day. So SMH actually is looking fairly constructive. I think there are a couple of names within the space that are interesting. AMD had a decent bounce last week. I think that's something maybe to keep an eye on. I consider AMD more of a swing or long-term hold consideration, but the semis actually are holding up fairly well. S&P 500 pulled back to a potential price support, bounced, and we'll see what happens. We're testing the 50-day moving average. We'll see if we can reclaim that next week. TVIX, like I said, I traded it in the first portion of the week last week. It was on our list of stocks to watch for the week, or stocks, ETFs, whatever. And traded it last week, had a decent little hit in it, and it's pulling back as the markets are finding potential support. The one sector that really kind of stood out to me last week, which has been a leading sector and been a very strong sector, was the weakness in aerospace and defense, right? We broke this trend line, pretty decent move lower to an area of support. Looks like the $100 area that we want to see 100 hold, right? But did find a little bit of support, getting a little bit of a bounce. But now what could potentially happen is we could be looking for this trend line to act as resistance on the way up. So maybe we're beginning to see the start of some weakness in aerospace defense. We'll see. But 100 area, I think, is an area we want to see hold the support. Home builders actually holding up very well above the 50-day, above the 200-day. That sector has been holding up extremely well. We'll see what happens with the FOMC minutes, if that impacts this space. But for right now, home builders looking pretty strong. Building materials pulled back and broke below the 200-day. Managed to reclaim the 200-day and managed to reclaim this trend line. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe we're finding a little bit of support here. XLE pulled back, potential double bottom on energy, right? I mean, a pretty decent pullback, and now at an area that could act as a double bottom. Maybe we get some kind of a bounce in the space. Financials had a double top, pulled back, testing the 200-day, broke below it, and actually got a nice little bounce. Now testing the 50-day. Financials trying to hold up. Industrials, right, pulled back to an area of potential price support, and we did test the 200-day, broke below it, but we have bounced a little bit. Let's see if that continues to hold. XLP, consumer staples, broke below the 50-day, but continues to consolidate and looking within a channel, and looks like may want to try and continue to move higher. That whole space, consumer staples, actually looks pretty strong. Healthcare had broke below the trend line to an area of potential price support, and we found we did bounce off of that. We're testing the 200-day moving average and the 50-day Consumer discretionary pulled back, did break below this little short-term trend line here. Almost tested the 200-day, but trying to find a little bit of support. We have a double top there as well. XOP, potential double bottom, right? Again, we got up to this resistance line, pulled back. Now we're testing this area. Again, could potentially see some kind of a bounce within that space. And then retail broke below the 50-day, reclaimed the 50-day at an area of potential price support. So retail worth keeping an eye on. See if we can manage to hold on to the 50-day. I'm not going to trade retail, but at least we are showing some support where we need to. So I think it's going to be an interesting week ahead. It was nice to see the markets close as strong as they did on Friday. Whether or not that can continue, we'll find out. Like I said, we've got some really key areas, key levels that if we break below, then I think it gets problematic, and could give some momentum to the bears, right? So I'm still cautious about the markets. Could we see a really nice snapback and continuation of the snapback that we started to see on Friday? Absolutely, that could happen. But there are some potential headwinds next week. We'll see how it plays out. All right, so real quickly, I want to talk about the T2108 and T2106 and T2107. So, we started to see in the McClellan, we got down to the negative 200 level and saw a nice reversal, right? There was some real fear coming into the marketplace. This level has acted as support in the past. We're getting a little snapback bounce. So things were getting a little overdone, right? T2107 and T2108. Actually, it was more, we were getting down close to the 20 level. And the T2108, I thought maybe we were going to tag there, but had a nice little reversal. Let's see if that continues. Right. As I said, I am still cautious on the markets just because of certain levels that we're seeing in some of the sectors. But we'll see. I mean, it was an impressive bounce, and this has been a bull market that has been very frustrating for a long time for the bears. Right. Every time it looks like we're going to break down, the bulls take over, and we get these buy the dip moments. And at some point, the buy the dip isn't going to work. I don't know when that's going to be. Nobody does. We'll see how it plays out over time. But let's take a look at. I'm going to add one more name here to my list. All right, let's take a look at the list of stocks to watch for next week. Let's start out with NNA. So look, I want to talk about the fact that shippers had some strength. Now, as it turns out, apparently there was a piece in Barron's this weekend about the shipper names. Maybe somebody knew about that piece coming out beforehand, because a lot of these shippers have already had a pretty decent move. And I don't know that you want to chase these things, but there are some names that have interesting looking setups, and if the shipper space remains somewhat hot, these could be names that maybe get some follow through. So, the shipper names, especially with the China thing that's going on this week, right? If they come to some kind of a deal, or if there's, some tweets from Trump that a deal's going to get done, and then maybe there's going to be tweets that it's not, could be a very volatile space. But if there is a deal if it's leaning more in the direction that there's going to be a deal, the shippers could do well off of that, right? So we could get some follow through in the space off of that, off of those types of tweets. And this NNA, it's got a pretty nice look, right? It's flirting with the $7 holla. You are above the 50-day, and you just had the golden cross, right? So we've got the 50 above the 200-day, You're above all the moving averages. You're flirting with the round number roll. Got a pretty good looking setup here on the daily. If you can take out 7 with some conviction, I think potentially you get up into about the 850 area. So worth keeping an eye on. NNA, AXU, Waste Management. What I like about this is where it's pulled back to an area of potential price support. Uh, Looking for a trend line break, reclaim $2, maybe get up into the 225 to 250 area. AXU has got, you've got the 50 above the 200 day. It had a beautiful run, got a little bit out of the Bollinger Band, and is now pulled back. And I'm looking at the potential support area, right? So we've got an area of potential support on longer time frame, and that's what I'm looking at. So this could be an interesting spot to take. It could be a higher risk swing, could be a day trading opportunity. Trades pretty decent volume. AXU I think is worth keeping an eye on for a trend line break and a reclaim of the 50-day moving average. OSS, very small float, tiny float. Another one that has pulled back into an area of potential price support, 250. You got the 50-day EMA, which could be acting as potential support. So 240, right? 240. We've got some potential price support there. You got the 50-day, which is just crossing the 200 days. So you got a golden cross that's just now taking place. If we can take out the $3 holla with conviction, I think potentially you got a run up into the 350 area, maybe even the $4 mark, and that's worth keeping an eye on, right? I like the fact that this thing has kind of broken a longer term trend line, popped above the moving averages, now testing an area of potential price support. Probably need to have some volume, in order to get involved in this one, but could be a higher risk swing as well. Pull back to the actual 50-day moving average and the 200-day at about 220. I think I would be pretty interested in potentially taking a swing in this one and put my stop, say, just below $2, right? Maybe 190 or something like that. But that's what I'm looking at on this OSS. I kind of like the setup on this one. Let me back this out real quick to, this is a fairly recent IPO too. So I don't know. I like the look of this one quite a bit. Chewy, another recent IPO. I love this company. I love the service. I'll be a Chewy customer probably for life. And it got down to its IPO price, which is $22 area, and it looked like it was going to break below there, and then it actually found some footing and bounced. So a little disappointed because I was hoping to get this thing at about $20, $18. Would have loved to have taken it there. It's breaking this trend line, coming up into an area of potential resistance, $26. Looking for that to maybe act as resistance, and then what I'd like to see is it pull back and test this $22 as support, a double bottom test. So I think one of the things that spiked this was that you had an insider buy, and I think that was in the 23 and change range, and that's what maybe gave this a little bit of a lift. Double bottom test at the $22 area, which is what their offering price was. I might start to dip my toe for a long-term hold in Chewy. XXII. So look, the marijuana space in general, I think has been beaten up pretty good, and I think that because of all the vaping stuff that's going on, I think at some point we're going to see a bounce in the cannabis space, and I think it's a sector that you want to have on your radar. XXII is in that space, and it pulled back, tested the 50-day moving average, kind of bounced off it, looking for a trend line break, maybe go retest that 250 area. It takes out 250, could get very interesting. New CEO there from Philip Morris, bought 100,000 shares at $1.90. This thing pulls back to $1.85, $1.90. I could take it for a swing. Full disclosure, I do have a lotto piece that I've been holding for actually for a while. It's just a small little piece. If it gets down to this 185, I probably would look to add, and I could look to take this as a day trading opportunity as well. Um, if it gets some volume and can take out that trend line and reclaim the 20-day moving average. So XXII, I'm keeping an eye on. EXTR, I have been wanting to I've traded this a few times, and they've done a couple of acquisitions. I'm not real fond of the insider activity here, but I do like, they've got some new products that they're coming out with. I think they are doing a good job of integrating the acquisitions. I like this more of a swing as a swing or a long-term hold. I would love to get it closer to $6, but it did break this trend line on Friday. It actually, I was looking for it to last week. I was looking for it to pull back to 650. I was gonna take a little dip there, and it didn't quite make it. It actually pulled to 675 and then bounced. But still keeping an eye on EXTR. I might look to get involved if it pulls back and tests the $7 area, the 200-day. Like I said, more of a swing or long-term hold play in EXTR. LPG is another shipping name. Look, it's got a fantastic looking daily. I mean, this is a big spot, $11. So it's a big spot on a longer time frame. This is a monthly time frame, and you can see back in 2017, this $11 area has acted as resistance. It's acted as support back here. So it's a big area that this one is at, and I'm really just looking for a potential short-term trading opportunity. Day trade, take out 11 with some conviction, maybe get a nice little scalp opportunity there. It looks like $10 is trying to hold this support, so a pullback to 10.20, maybe that's an interesting spot to take it for take it for a swing. Put a stop below, say, 975, and looking for it if it can take out $11 with conviction. Let me go back to the longer term time frame here. We can take this area out with conviction. I think potentially we get a test up into the 1250 area, 1225, somewhere in that area. Maybe get a double top test, right? 1250. So I think that's doable, right? Just a quick hit on LPG if the space remains hot. Let me go back to the daily time frame. INWK. It's got a good looking setup on the daily, right? Above the 50-day, above the 200-day, you have a golden cross. It actually held up fairly well in a week tape, and it's broken this long-term trend line. That's what I'm looking at here. It has broken this long-term trend line. We popped out, pulled back, pretty much tested the top of the trend line, bounced off of that, and now we continue to flag out here. I just think it has a good looking setup on the daily. Looking for it to take out this trend line and potentially go up into test this 550 area on INWK. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was earnings. This had this gap down, and then it had this reversal candle, and then it came out with earnings, gapped up, and it's been consolidating. Just a really good looking setup there on INWK. And probably more of a swing on that one. If I could get a 4 entry, entry close to 4, I think that would be pretty compelling. SMSI pulled back, tested 5 as potential support, got a little bit of a bounce on Friday. Looks like MACD is about to go positive, stochastics curling up. Maybe a red to green pullback to 540 or so. That could be an entry. Maybe more of a swing. Kind of looks like we're putting in a channel here that trading within, and maybe it goes back up to test that $7 area. Could be waiting on earnings. But interesting action on Friday. Maybe it gets some follow through worth having on the radar. CDXC. No, 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 no. I think I put this in the wrong way. Hold on a second. Yeah, I got the wrong one. Hold on. It's supposed to be CXDC. There we go. That's better. Let me make that adjustment here. Hold on 1 second. Gotta remove this. And I gotta add. That's this dyslexic thing that I have going on. CXDC. Okay. All right. CXDC. So where to go? All right. All right, CXDC. Nice little pop on Friday with some pretty decent volume. China name, closed above the 200-day. It's right at an area of potential price resistance. But what I'm looking at is the fact that it's taken out this long-term trend line. It had this big pop, kind of nice consolidation for quite a while. Got a little bit of volume on Friday. I'm not sure what popped it. Looks like they signed a $135 million financing agreement with the banks consortium led by Industrial Commercial. So looks like they got some financing straightened out. That gave this a nice pop. Closed right at the high of the day, above the 200-day. If China names get some lift, this one maybe gets some follow through. So could get a red to green, looking for a pullback closer to $2, right? Takes out 230 with some conviction. I think we can get a pop up into the 250 area, maybe even head up into the $3 area. So just a trading opportunity there in CXDC. Like I said, red to green would be kind of interesting. Maybe we pull back to 222 bucks, somewhere in that area. Worth at least having on the radar. And I screwed up my whole list now. Boy, did I screw up my list. By making that change, I should have waited. All right. So I'm just going to keep going. If I repeat a name, I apologize. XELA. So, full disclosure, I had a swing position. This is a highly speculative turnaround play. They've had their credit downgraded. It's a big freaking company. I mean, they, over $1 billion in sales. This is a big company. They have a lot of debt, and that is the issue. And cash flow has been an issue. But they're landing some really decent sized contracts. And actually, on Friday, they announced the contract that they've got with Veteran Affairs with General Dynamics. That over a 5-year period is worth about $900 million, and that is the largest contract these guys have ever gotten. So, very interesting, big volume on Friday. A lot of people claiming it's a junk company, blah blah blah. I think they have somebody out there right now that is looking at a potential acquisition of the company. And like I said, it's a highly speculative turnaround play that I actually added to on Friday at about 144. And I'm looking for this thing. Look, we have a potential double bottom here. Pulls back into the $1 area. I could be inclined to actually add to my position. It's size appropriate for the amount of risk that I'm taking. Insiders have bought. June 2019, CFO bought 247,000 shares at $1.65. Insiders have bought at $5.24 and $4.55. So, you've got insiders that are stepping up to the plate. We'll see what happens. It's more of a swing. It's got a fairly small float actually on this thing. So if it gets going, it could get pretty interesting. I think there's a decent short position there as well. Let me just check that real quick. Uh, oops. Yeah, let's see the percentage on the so it's got 26 million shares in the float. Now it's not that big of a short interest. It's only 4%. So there's not a big short interest there, but um, you know, I think potential double bottom here. We'll see what happens with it next week. All right, let's keep moving on here. BVSN. So this thing has had a big move already. It's extended. It's out of the upper Bollinger Band. It hit up into an area of potential price resistance. You know, maybe looking for could be a day trading opportunity, a pullback to the 220 to or $2 to 235 area as potential support for a bounce. It is breaking this long-term trend line, and you do have the beginning of a golden cross. You got the 50 crossing above the 200 day. Pretty decent volume for it on Friday, but it trades super thin. Really just looking for a day trading opportunity on this one potentially, but it is extended, right? So keep that in mind. EYPT, caught my attention on Friday. Had a nice longer, it broke this longer term trend line, got back above the 50-day moving average, flagged around the 200-day, popped through it, pulled back to an area of price support, bounced right off of that, and here we are testing this 2 and change area again. Now that is a gap fill. We can take out 210 with conviction. Maybe we get a pop up into the 250 to 275 $3 area. Maybe a red to green on this one. Pull back to a buck 90. Looks like maybe we've got some support there, some price support. Stochastics are starting to curl. MACD histo looks like maybe it's going to go positive. Decent volume. Just looking for a short-term trading opportunity in EYPT. RMED, double bottom is what I'm looking at on this one. 6.9 million shares in the float. CEO got canned. CFO is the interim CEO. Activist investors are involved in this one. It's a fairly recent IPO. They have delayed filing their 10K. There's all kinds of, class action lawsuits against these guys. They have a 50 million. Is it a 50 million shell? No. That's a different one. But it's in an interesting spot. The $1 holla could be acting as support. Looking for a trend line break. Maybe get a pop up into the 50-day. Maybe even get a gap fill up to about 270 or so. Could be interesting, right? Just traded 75,000 shares on Friday. High risk trade here, but on a trend line break and a break above $1.50 gets pretty interesting to me. Worth at least having on the radar. INFU, beautiful looking daily on this. A lot of decent insider buys, and have had some insider buys recently between $4.50 and $5, roughly about 70,000 shares. Broke out of this nice little formation, which held up in the market weakness fairly well. MACD histo just went positive. It trades very, very thin. That is the issue with this stock. I'm actually looking at this thing as more of a swing or long-term hold consideration, and the reason for that is it's in blue skies. I mean, this thing is in blue skies. I went through their last quarter. Their revenues are growing, and I like the look of this stock. I like what they had to say in their last quarter, and I think potentially the next quarter is coming up could be a real catalyst for this stock. So ideally, I'd like to get this thing on a pullback to 550. 5 to 550 would be a nice entry zone, I think, for INFU for a higher risk, more speculative type swing. But we are in blue skies on this thing, and I like it. I might look to dip my toe in this one fairly soon. So could be a day trading opportunity with volume on a break over six. Could get onto some people's radars on a break over six, but worth keeping an eye on INFU. Let me see what else we've got going on. Okay, GLNG. So with the shipping names, this is not a great looking chart. Definitely had some better looking shipping names. I'm just looking at the fact that it's testing this 50-day moving average. If it can take out $15, take out this trend line, it could get interesting, right? So just looking for a potential catch-up name within the shipping space, and GLNG, maybe that's the name. I don't know. We'll see. It's just one to keep an eye on for a trend line break, maybe a 15 test, take out $15. AVID, not a great looking chart. Potential double bottom test. Looks like this 590 is trying to hold as support. This might be waiting on earnings because this I believe was their last earnings report. They disappointed. They're still making money. I think it's at a very critical spot, right? So if it breaks below 590 with some volume, could be a short, right? So if you're inclined to short this area of support, if it breaks, this could be a short. You've got a death cross, which is about to occur as well. So if you do get the death cross, you do get a breakdown, probably more of a short opportunity. But if we manage to hold here, and this manages to hold, it could be a nice bounce opportunity with potential for a gap fill. That's what I'm looking at with AVID. Wow. I just like the symbol, and if this thing pops, you're going to be able to say, wow, look at that. I'm just kidding. Actually, it's kind of flagging out here right at the 50-day moving average. I think there was an insider buying, and that's what got my attention. Insider buy, it wasn't a big insider buy, but there has been insider buying. This is a fairly recent IPO, I believe. So, it's been in a downtrend. Could it go back down and test this area, 490, for a double bottom? Absolutely. That is possible. If it takes out this trend line, I think it could get very interesting. It's got a fairly small float. It's 24 million shares. And I just kind of like this the way it's flagging here. It might just come up and test the trend line around 750. Up to the 200-day or so, but that's a pretty decent move from where it currently sits, right? So at least worth having on the radar. OMI. So another one that has just had the golden cross, 50-day crossing above the 200-day. Pulled back beautifully to an area of potential price support. Flirting with the $6 holla and the 20-day moving average. Broke this long-term trend line, really kind of pulled back, tested the top of that trend line, held, and with that golden cross, I think this one is interesting. So a break over, over 6 with conviction, or 610, 615 with conviction. Maybe we head back up into that $8 area for a double top test. I don't know, but I like the look of OMI, so I think it's worth having on the radar. Could be more of a swing than a day trade on OMI. Twitter, same thing, more of a swing or long-term hold consideration. We basically filled the gap on Twitter. Right, pull back to this trend line here, testing it as support, found some support bounce, flirting with the $40 holla. If anybody, the reason why I think this is more of a swing or long term hold, I mean, as we get closer and closer into the election, um, Twitter's going to blow up, man. I think Twitter's going to do extremely well with the environment that's coming up, and I think we're going to go back up and test these highs. 47, $50. I think it's presenting potentially a decent opportunity for entry in this 38. You know, as close to this trend line as possible. 38.50, I think would be a great place to get it for a swing or a long term hold, but may not get that. May have already tested that, right? So I think it's worth maybe considering, below 40, at least starting to dip your toe in Twitter for a long-term hold. Crocs, look, I'm not a big retail guy, but this has got a pretty hot-looking setup. 50-day, just crossed above the 200-day. Nice little flag on the daily. I'm not going to play it, but it has that's a pretty good look right there, right? You can take that trend line out. I think you go test that $31 area. Just got a good looking setup. I don't know when they report, but worth keeping an eye on it. RRR, the Fertitta brothers bought more shares in the 19 and change range. These guys have bought a boatload of shares. Now, the casinos are not that hot right now. I think they got Macau casino names got downgraded. But I think, between 18 and 19, if you can start dipping your toe and building a swing position or a long-term hold in RRR, I think that could be a good way to go. I think Vegas with the stadium coming online, this is more of a locals casino, but I think these guys are going to benefit when the stadium comes online. So we'll see. This is more of a long-term hold type play. Pull back, I'd love to see it pull back to $17 or $16.70. I'd be much more inclined to take some there for a swing or long-term hold. I'd like to be able to buy it better than the Fertitta brothers, but I don't know that you're going to get that opportunity. So, like I said, pull back to 18 could be very interesting. MTP. What the heck is MTP? Yeah, no, forget about MTP. Luna, this is one that I have played. I sold when it had, got up into the $7 area. Sold most of it. I think I have a little piece left. I've been watching it. It's pulled back to an area of support, and it seems to be holding. If this thing breaks back over $6 with conviction, I think you get a retest up in the $7 area. I would love to add this thing on a pullback to force, to $5 is where I'd really like to get an add, but I don't know if I'm going to get that opportunity. A break over 6 with conviction could be a nice trading opportunity. No debt. They've done a couple of acquisitions. It's not cheaply valued. That's my issue. It's a little expensive, so I would love it to pull back to 450 to get more aggressive, even $4. I have several areas of potential price support, but it may not go there. We seem to be trying to hold the 50-day moving average as support, so this thing may continue to just stair step higher. And the last one is Genius. So, this has been one that has not been kind to me. I actually own this as a long-term hold, but what was interesting is last week we had the CEO stepped up to the plate, bought a good chunk of shares at 75 cents. I think it was 1 million shares. And then they had some news about Nickelodeon is going to triple the daily broadcast of their Rainbow Rangers new season they have coming out, their second season hitting, and I think what's going to happen is we're going to start seeing a lot more news flow in Genius, right? So they've got Llama Llama, the second season, going to Netflix. They've got Rainbow Rangers. They've got this kindergarten, superhero kindergarten with Arnold Schwarzenegger. They haven't announced a partner there yet. If that happens, that's a catalyst. I think there are some potential catalysts, and with the CEO stepping up, this could be a trading opportunity on a break over the $1 holla with some volume. Um, if these guys start to report some decent numbers, this thing could actually really run. So it hasn't been a good trade so far. It's been a long-term hold for me, and I am keeping an eye on it for a break over $1 with conviction. So that's it. Highly speculative name there, but could be an interesting time for the company. Things could finally start to come to fruition for them. We'll see how it plays out. And that is it. That's my whole list of stocks to watch for trading and investing. It could be a very interesting week ahead. Let's see how it plays out. I think we still need to be somewhat cautious, but could be a very interesting week ahead. We'll see. We'll see. Good luck trading out there. Don't chase. Always have a trade plan. Know your risk reward. Know your time frames. And that's it. Good luck trading out there, and I'll see you all next week.